Hello and welcome to the fourth video of working with Microsoft Excel. My name is Mr. Tompkins and we're going to talk about how to use Excel to create very good graphs that include trend lines and error bars. These are the two data tables that we set up in the first of the series with the experiment where I changed the voltage of a circuit and then I measured the current that was flowing through the circuit. And I've already conducted the experiment, and this is the raw data that I collected right here. And then I went ahead and analyzed it using the stuff that we've learned in the past two videos. So I have the voltage to a degree of uncertainty of plus or minus 0.1 volts. And then I have the average current, and here are the averages of my trials. And here are their uncertainties, once again following the stuff that we learned in the past two videos. So now what I want to do is I want to create a graph. Whenever we graph, we do not graph raw data. Raw data is strictly there so that we can analyze it. Once we analyze the data, then we start looking into graphing in order to create a usable, visible way of showing the data in a nice way that people can see. So the first thing I want to do whenever I start graphing is I want to look at well, what is my dependent variable? What is my independent variable? My independent variable is should be on the left of the left column of my data table because this is what I'm changing. And then my dependent variable is on the right or in the middle, somewhere to the right. So my independent variable is voltage and my dependent variable is current. In order to get a graph of these two, if they're in the proper order, Excel will automatically graph them correctly. So what I do is I highlight the data I want to graph and I go to Insert. And I want to insert a scatter plot. These other types of graphs really do not lend themselves to quantitative data, but a scatter plot is really what we want to look at. And so we're going to click a scatter plot, and we do not want lines. Lines are bad because they don't really tell us the full story. Instead, what we want to do is we want to look at trend lines. And so we don't want these dots connected. We just want them plotted. Now, this graph that it gives us is very basic. And so the one I like to use is this one right here, the very first one on the Design tab. If I just click on it, well, it gives me a chart title, axis titles, and it gives me a legend. You don't really need the key or the legend unless you have more than one series. But right now, we only have the one series. Now, in order to add series to your data table, and I'll go ahead and show you how to do that real quick, is you're going to go up here to Select Data, and it's going to bring up this screen, and it shows you all the series that we have. And so if I wanted to add a series, I just click Add. If I want to edit the current series, well, I just click Edit. So if I click Edit, this is what it brings up. And it asks me to name the series. And so once again, if this is for a parallel circuit or something that has a specific name, I can name it. But because I've only done one series, I don't really need to have a name. And then it says to find the X values. Well, the X values are our independent variable. And if you notice, it's already highlighted those. So if I were to highlight those myself, once again, it fills it in. Then I can click on this again, on that symbol, and it highlight my Y values. And it go ahead and populates it. Click OK, and then click OK again, and then it puts all of my data on my graph. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and title my graph. And so this is dependent versus independent. And so my dependent variable is current in amps versus my independent variable, which is voltage, in volts. My independent variable is on... My dependent variable is on the vertical axis, and so my dependent variable is current in amps. And my independent variable is down here on the bottom, so that is going to be voltage in volts. Once again, the series I do not have to name because I only have one, but if I had multiple series, like different types of circuits, and I wanted to see how the voltage and current played out in both of them, then I would have to have a legend that has that on there. Now, if I notice, it's auto-scaled, so it goes from 0 to 3. But if I look at my largest current data point, I believe the largest current is 2.4. I can adjust that, but I'm okay as long as the graph takes up at least half of the plotting area in both the vertical and the horizontal direction. So if I look here and I draw a line halfway down, well, then it takes up over half of the horizontal, and then same thing here. If I could draw a line at the halfway mark across, well, then it takes up over half that space. So I'm okay with this. Next thing what we want to do is we want to add our error bars. And so in order to add error bars, we go up here to Layout. We want to click on Error Bars. Now, I don't recommend clicking any of these things. Just go down to More Error Bars, and it's going to put a a standard error bar on here. But those error bars really don't help us much. Instead, we got to place our own. So whenever I'm talking about vertical error bars, well, my vertical is current. And so in this case, the uncertainty in the current, I'm going to have to do a custom because it's different each time. And so I'm going to do a specific value. And this is the value I'm going to highlight for my positive, because this is the one I calculated, but it's also the plus or minus, so it's also the negative. And then once I do that, once I enter that in, I click OK, and then I click Close. And now if you click off, you can see how these error bars are varying depending on the calculations that I had. So depending on how my trials went and how certain I can say that my error bars are. Notice how my voltage error bars are still quite long. So what I want to do is I want to click on them and then go back over to error bars and more error bar options. And now I'm dealing with horizontal error bars. Now my horizontal or my voltage uncertainty is plus or minus 0.1 volts. And so in this case, I want to do a fixed value and I want to type it in as 0.1. So I want to have an uncertainty of 0.1 volts, and I click Close. And then now you can see my graph with the horizontal error bars and the vertical error bars. So those are my error bars and how I put them into the graph. Now it's time to add my trend line, because a trend line is very important as far as finding slope and those kinds of things. And so in order to add trend lines, we just go up here to this button that says Trend Lines, and we want to go to More Trend Lines Options. Now, the reason why we go to the options instead of just clicking a linear trend line is because we get to choose linear, but then we also get to say display the equation on the chart. So instead of me having to calculate the slope of the trend line, it automatically does that. And if I look at the equation, well, it's in y equals mx plus b format, and so I know that the slope of the line is this m, which is 0.3982. Once again, too many significant digits, but that's okay. I can use that to whittle it down. And then the y-intercept is 0.0111. So it tells me some good information using the equation set up by Excel. Now, one thing I noticed is that my error travels over here into the negative realm, and so if you see this right here, it's because of that. And that's fine to leave that there. If you don't really like that idea, because we can assume that this should be 0 anyway with a solid voltage. And I could have a 0 voltage very easily by not applying a battery. So I could have, my 0 voltage be plus or minus 0. And so I can actually get rid of this axis by clicking on it. Actually, I want to format the horizontal axis. So right-click on it and then click Format Axis. And I can set the minimum to be 0. So let's set the minimum to be 0 so that we only encompass the part that we want. And let's set the maximum, because my maximum voltage is 6 volts. Let's set it at 6.5. So let's get rid of that last extra voltage. And then you'll notice it'll spread it out. And then same thing with the current. We can go ahead and format it, and we can go ahead and set the maximum. Let's go ahead and set the maximum at our, instead of 2.4, let's go 2.5 amps. That way it covers the whole graph, and we still have a little bit extra. So this is what your graph should look like. And then now it's really easy to take this and put it into Word. You just right-click on it, click Copy, and then you can paste it into Word. Now, don't try and build your graphs in Word. They do not have the same, it does not have the same powerful software to create graphs, to add error bars, and to add trend lines. Create them in Excel, and then copy and paste them into Word. Okay? So graphs are fairly simple. You just have to know your way around to find those key pieces, the error bars and the trend line.